Stewart here from Drone Film Guide, the channel where we learn to fly like filmmakers, addressing the question, should you buy the MAVIC Mini or the MAVIC Air? But rather than just sit here and read out some specifications, I'm going to impart a little bit of experience as a 5-year licensed drone pilot here in the UK, a veteran of 2 video production companies with my beautiful wife Alina, so hopefully we can add something valuable to this conversation. As with any purchase, you need to consider your own needs, your wants, and then weigh that up against your budget. So let me tell you now that these 2 drones are both very, very good, but it is of course what you do with them that counts. So if you want a head start in terms of creating great video and photos, do download a copy of our free ebook, From Drone Zero to Drone Hero, 37 tips, a great way to get you up and running. The MAVIC Mini is $399 and the MAVIC Air is $919. So why are we even having this conversation when there's such a price difference? Well, the reason is the MAVIC Mini has proven to be so good. And if you look at our review on the channel, you'll see that we are big fans. You can get some really great professional results from it, despite DJI's attempts to differentiate these two and not cannibalize the higher end drones with the MAVIC Mini. We were so impressed with the MAVIC Mini when we got it that we started to wonder why would anyone even bother buying a MAVIC Air given that it is over twice the price. But we'll go through the list and you'll see that there are still some quite compelling reasons for taking a look at the MAVIC Air, and as I say, based on your own needs, wants and budgetary concerns, you can make up your own mind by the end of this video. Size, weight and practicality. Well, coming from a Phantom series of drones, I cannot complain about the size of these drones. They are both fantastically practical. Keep in mind you have to carry a controller and a monitoring device when you are out and about, and they weigh the same across both drones. So we're talking about the 181 gram difference between the two. I think we can all manage that on a hike. Of course, if you are buying the MAVIC Mini because it weighs 249 grams and that gets around your regulatory concerns in Canada or wherever you happen to be, then by all means, MAVIC Mini is the clear winner, but otherwise 2 fantastically practical drones. Durability and build quality, clear win for the MAVIC Air. If you've not held a MAVIC Mini before, it's hard to overstate just how light and flimsy it feels. It really is not built to take a knock. That's no understatement. Elements of this are made with what feels like a foam. Yeah, it's going to disintegrate if you crash it. And I'm going to come back to this theme a couple of times in this video. Buy cheap, buy twice. Mindful that a lot of people buying this drone might be early on in their journey as drone pilots. Yes, it's cheaper, it's half the price, but if you buy 2 of them, it's the same price. Clear win for the MAVIC Air. Obstacle avoidance, a clear win for the MAVIC Air with forwards and rear facing sensors. In the 5 years I've been flying drones, I have nearly crashed a drone about 1,000 times, even with obstacle avoidance, and I have successfully crashed a drone numerous times, once or twice with fatal consequences for the drone. That is, obstacle avoidance is very, very helpful. No matter how diligent you are, it is very easy to crash a drone. And again, in inexperienced hands, I honestly think the landscape is going to be littered with MAVIC Mini parts in the not too distant future, so a clear win for the MAVIC Air. Speed, battery and transmission range. Right, the MAVIC Air has a top speed of 42.5 miles an hour in sports mode, and the MAVIC Mini has a top speed of 29 miles an hour in sports mode. I don't really care about that. What I do care about is the power of the drone and its ability to get home in gusty, difficult conditions, because I have had many scares in windy conditions. It's much windier in the air than it is on the ground, a lesson that I keep learning, and the MAVIC Mini really does not do well in high winds at all. It just doesn't. The MAVIC Air is the clear winner in terms of power. It really does feel solid in high winds. MAVIC Mini gets pushed around a bit. Offsetting that a little bit is that the MAVIC Mini has a far superior battery performance. It claims to have 30-minute battery performance. In reality, you'll get low 20s, maybe 25 minutes out of it, but it does feel really, really good when you've got it up in the air. That's just good for your creative pursuits, but it's also good if you are having trouble getting that thing back or getting it down, because that's probably the #1 source of crashes, is people not paying attention to their battery life. MAVIC Air, that was a disappointment for us when we got it, particularly in the cold. We would be lucky to get 15 minutes out of it. Personal opinion was that it didn't get anywhere near the stated 21-minute battery life, so a win for the MAVIC Mini when it comes to battery life. As for transmission range, they both use a Wi-Fi system. Anecdotally, I would say the MAVIC Mini has had better performance for us. It still gets glitchy and it still cuts out from time to time on your FPV. MAVIC Air, on the other hand, we've had it 70 meters away and it cuts out. That's just pure anecdote, but if I had to choose, I would say MAVIC Mini is the better performer. But let's call that one a draw. Flight control. Both of these drones are beautifully smooth to use for creating nice manual cinematic controls with your controller. Gone are the days of drones just flicking about and it being really hard to get nice smooth arcing motions. You still need a bit of practice and a little bit of skill, but these go like they're on rails when you're going around semicircles, nice little arcs around subjects. I really enjoy flying both of them. One thing I would say is that because the MAVIC Mini is smaller, it can be a little bit harder to see, and with our grey skies most of the year in Scotland, it's particularly hard to see against all that white cloud and grey cloud. Yet another reason why the MAVIC Mini is easier to crash. So just to quickly summarise where we are, as I've said, there is a concern that buy cheap, buy twice with the MAVIC Mini. As I say, it's very light, it's different colours, so it's harder to see against the clouds. It has no obstacle avoidance, it's not as powerful in the wind, it's not as durable, it's clearly not built to last. So if those considerations do matter to you, you must keep those in mind, because at the moment, if we're just looking at the physical characteristics, the MAVIC Air is the clear winner. One final physical characteristic worth mentioning, it may or may not matter to you, the MAVIC Mini is a little bit more pleasing on the ear. The MAVIC Air really does sound like a screeching swarm of bees, and attention is never a good thing when you're out flying. You want to just get on with your business, so the quieter the better, the less intrusive the better, and the win goes to the MAVIC Mini on that one. Now that we've got all that out the way, let's get on to what really matters to us, which is the photographic and video performance. If you're looking for a photography drone, then the MAVIC Air is the clear winner. Both take 12 megapixel photos from a 1/2.3 inch CMOS sensor. So the performance should be similar in that respect, but with the MAVIC Air you can retain the raw photo, the uncompressed data in that image. With the MAVIC Mini you get your standard JPEG. Now if you've never edited a raw photo before, then your mind will be blown by your ability to recover the detail in the highlights, to pull out the shadows into midtones and just generally play around with that image in a program like Lightroom. By all means, you can take amazing photos with the MAVIC Mini, not suggesting otherwise, but there is just a fundamental difference between JPEG and RAW, and the MAVIC Air gives you RAW. A quick shout out to one of our sponsors for photo editing, Luminar 4. We've had great results with it. It's cheaper than the Lightroom Photoshop combo, so it sits in that kind of mid-range price bracket, but gives you beginner functionality all the way through to professional level if you're at that stage. But it's very easy to use, good fun, all kinds of looks, presets, all that kind of stuff, professional editing controls. For your colours, you can do a one-click sky replacement, which is a lot of fun and actually very practical. Remove unwanted objects. We have videos on all this kind of stuff, so do check it out. There's a link in the description below with details on how to get the best price. Definitely recommend that if you're into photo editing. Let's talk about video performance, and I will try and keep this brief because you might be surprised by the conclusions. Both have the same sensor, a 1/2.3 inch CMOS sensor as I mentioned, but on paper the Air should be the clear winner. MAVIC Mini, 2.7K resolution with a maximum bitrate of 40 megabits per second, and that compares with the 4K MAVIC Air with a maximum bitrate of 100 megabits per second. Well, it might come as a surprise when I tell you that we think the MAVIC Mini produces a superior picture in video mode than the MAVIC Air. This was where we were disappointed with the MAVIC Air when we bought it 2 years ago. We were flying the Phantom 4 standard at the time, 4K 60 megabits per second. MAVIC Air came out 4K 100 megabits per second. So we had an expectation that the quality of that picture would be at least as good, if not better. In reality, we haven't actually found that to be the case. The picture is incredibly noisy in the shadows. You have to be extremely careful not to underexpose this image. If you do, with the assumption that you can then just boost your exposure in post, let's say you're protecting some highlights in the sky, for example, you will be very disappointed because it destroys the image with the amount of noise that it introduces. It really is and really was quite disappointing. We actually thought the Phantom 4 was superior in that respect, much as the MAVIC Air brought with it benefits of portability and all that kind of stuff. And just to clarify, I'm talking about the original Phantom 4 standard. We've also found, and maybe not everyone's the same, but we've also found a strange red colour cast across all of the MAVIC Air footage. We can remove that in post, but it's an extra step, and it's just a bit strange. Now, how is it that a drone that is less than half the price can possibly have a better performance? I don't really know, if I'm honest. If you're prepared to sacrifice some resolution, because we do only have 2.7K here, then you will get a better picture quality, more accurate color representation, and less noise in those shadows, and a little bit more forgiveness if you have to tweak that picture after the event by raising the exposure a little bit. So in that respect, we have been astonished by the MAVIC Mini, and that is why this conversation is being had. Can you compare the two? Well, yes, you can, because in video mode, at least you have a picture quality that is superior to the MAVIC Air. So if we put all that other stuff about durability and all that kind of stuff to the side, if we're just looking at this from a cinematographic perspective, which quite frankly, that's what we do, the MAVIC Mini is absolutely astonishing. Now, there are a couple of catches. You don't have full manual control as such. We've shown you in another video that essentially you kind of do. Full manual control, you can't actually control the shutter speed here, but what you do is you just dial the EV compensation up and down and you press auto exposure lock. That lets you lock in that manually set exposure. You're not going to see the picture brightness change when you're flying, and that essentially gets you the same results. Here in Europe, we like to shoot on 25 frames per second, which is an option with this MAVIC Mini, so happy, can't complain. What's a little bit strange is that they don't give you an option of 24 frames per second in NTSC regions like the United States. You have to shoot on 30 frames per second, which I think is a bit odd and a bit annoying, if I'm honest. Unlike your exposure, which you can lock in with the auto exposure lock, you cannot lock in your white balance. You have auto white balance, which was a great concern when we bought this, because auto white balance is stupid. You never want to use it. It looks ridiculous if you see the color temperature change during a shot, but I can confirm after extensive use that 99% of the time you will not notice a white balance color shift. So don't not buy the MAVIC Mini because you're concerned about auto white balance. Because we do have full manual control with the MAVIC Air, it's a little bit easier to use ND filters if you want to put a little bit of glass on the front to bring the exposure down and get yourself a nice 1/50th of a second shutter for real-time footage and the appropriate motion blur the eye is accustomed to seeing, blah, blah, blah. We have 100 videos on that on our site. MAVIC Mini, not so obvious. You kind of need to take a stab in the dark when you're putting your ND filters on. So to be honest with you, we would give them a miss. Also, there seems to be some kind of little bit of digital motion blur or something. I really like the picture, even when you're flying close to the ground and you see all that movement at the bottom of the frame. It still looks quite smooth. So again, a big tick for the picture quality on the MAVIC Mini. In terms of video shooting modes, we have a lot more with the MAVIC Air. We have active track, quick shots, which we have on the MAVIC Mini. We have smart capture. Tap fly is quite good. It's like a replacement for course lock essentially. You can just point it where you want it to go and maneuver the drone/camera as you wish. We have a tripod mode, which is pretty much replicated here on the MAVIC Mini with this Cine Smooth, I think it's called. We've got cinematic, we've got point of interest, which is great for rotational circles, but we can do that with the orbit quick shot here on the MAVIC Mini. So we do have more with the MAVIC Air. It depends whether that matters to you. Personally, I wouldn't really miss them because I fly mostly manually when I'm doing maneuvers. Quick shots are very helpful. I think quick shots are actually great professional tools essentially. We did a video on that with the MAVIC Mini showing you how to get some great results with the quick shots. So yes, the MAVIC Air is better in that respect, but again, MAVIC Mini snapping close at the heels, which is why we're having this conversation. Internal storage. The MAVIC Air has 8 GB, the MAVIC Mini has none, and it has saved my bacon more than once having that storage built into a drone. There's nothing worse than being out on location, finding out that your memory card is still in your computer. So that's a nice wee tick there for the MAVIC Air. I've thrown a lot of facts at you and some opinions, so how do we possibly draw any conclusions? Well, as I say, I don't know what your needs and your wants are, and I certainly don't know what your budget is. What I would say is that for a drone that probably started out its life, certainly on the drawing board, as some really consumery social media type drone, it's amazing that we're having this conversation about the performance that you can extract from it. Despite DJI's best efforts to rein in the capability of this drone, you can get amazing results with a little bit of expertise, and we teach you how to do that here on the channel. Don't forget to get that ebook that we mentioned previously. So I would buy the MAVIC Mini all day long if that's what my budget allowed. Very, very mindful of the concerns I mentioned with regards to the ease with which you can crash this drone when you consider the durability and the fact it is not built to last. As for the MAVIC Air, well, 2 years on you can see it is still a really credible drone, but it is more than twice the price of a MAVIC Mini. So even if you look at it on a standalone basis, it's a lot of money, $919 or 700 and something pounds here in the UK. You might ask questions as to whether you should save up a bit more money and get a MAVIC 2 Zoom, for example, a far superior drone to the MAVIC Air, albeit you're getting into a whole new price point. You go ahead and make up your own mind. By all means, let me know what you think in the comments below. These types of videos always elicit outrage from people that have bought one or bought the other one and just want to tell the world that they've made the right decision. Look, there's no right or wrong decisions. They're both great drones. Let's all be friends and share our thoughts and experience in the comments below. We have a nice community here. No room for trolls, please. Okay, lots more content coming here on the channel. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always, and we will see you next time on Drone Film Guide.